So it probably seems odd that I'm talking about part 1 in a 3-parter only, when in just my previous Transformers Prime review, I established that I was going to start talking about multi-parters kind of all as one unit, and that's because the 3 parts of the episode titled Orion Pax feel like separate episodes that are just kind of strung together. It's actually really interesting. Like, they clearly have an interconnected story, but they feel more like a mini-series within the series proper than they do 3 parts of a single episode. There is certainly enough about these individual episodes to make them feel distinct from one another that I feel like I need to talk about them separately. In fact, as far as setting up arcs go, and this is its own little mini arc, this first episode, this first part of the 3-parter, is fantastic. We are given a summary of what happened last season with Optimus shooting all of his Matrix energy into Unicron's spark and reverting himself back to his state as Orion Pax, the archivist from before he became Optimus Prime. But that recap is given in character by the Autobots as they reason through what must have happened to their leader. We also get a reminder that Jack holds an artifact given to him by Optimus, the key to Vector Sigma, which we find out in this episode is a supercomputer back on Cybertron itself. And this explanation fits perfectly into the dialogue as well, because of course they would have to explain to Jack what this thing is and how it might be used to save Optimus. Vector Sigma has within its databanks a copy of everything that was in the Matrix. If they can turn Vector Sigma on, then theoretically they should be able to return that information to the Matrix and return Optimus to who he was. But it seems that Optimus trusted Jack with this task because only one who is a Prime or is chosen by a Prime can use the key in the first place. Therefore, Jack has to be there and he has to be the one to do it. Obviously, this is extremely reckless, but Optimus must have had his reasons. Unfortunately, they can't ask him what those reasons were because he's not here. And not just because he's Orion Pax again now, but because, if you recall, at the end of last season, he went off with Megatron. He didn't recognize the other Autobots, but he did recognize his friend Megatronus. And meanwhile, while all this is going on, you can see Megatron thinks that he is won. Optimus Prime is effectively dead, and the only remnant of him believes that Megatron is his friend and mentor. He feels like he can manipulate this person to do anything he wants, and he immediately starts gaslighting him, convincing him the Autobots are the ones who are evil, who decimated Cybertron. And it becomes very clear very quickly that he's only keeping Optimus alive because, as Orion Pax, he has information that can be used to decode some Autobot data that they picked up during the war but were never able to decode. Megatron knows, as well as the other Autobots do, that Optimus in any form would never become a Decepticon as the Decepticons actually exist. So Megatron may be able to lie to him and trick him for a while, but it's not going to last forever, and so Megatron knows that he's going to have to kill Optimus eventually. He just wants him to get this task done first. So there's a clock on this. We have until Optimus manages to decode this information before he dies. That's how long we have to save him. It keeps the tension high right from the start, especially when we see that Orion Pax is a very curious SOB. He digs through the Decepticon records to learn more about the faction and discovers Starscream, Megatron's supposed second-in-command, who isn't around anymore, and Megatron has to lie to him and say that Starscream is dead. Later, when there's a commotion aboard ship, despite being ordered to stay at his console, he goes and wanders the corridors looking to see what it was. Like, Megatron wants this information, but the Decepticons have been operating for millennia without it. He will kill Optimus if he feels like he has to, even if he doesn't have the information yet. And even though this is still technically Optimus, even though he still has the same body, and I would imagine the same technical capabilities, he's not a fighter anymore. He doesn't have all of that fighting experience programmed into him through the Matrix. It's very unlikely that he would be able to defend himself. But Megatron is also having to make concessions to have Optimus here. He's having to limit what his Decepticons can say around him lest they trigger some memories of his. And there's a scene later where when he has the perfect chance to kill one of the Autobots, he has to let them go because he can't let Optimus see him murder someone in cold blood. But then there's even yet another layer to that scene where he has to let one of them go. It's RC that he has to let go. The Decepticons once again make a move against that same military base, trying to acquire the same power source that they tried to get their hands on last season to finish their space bridge. And Bumblebee, Bulkhead, and RC go to try to stop them, and when they retreat with the device, RC chases them back through their ground bridge and infiltrates the Nemesis. It's a desperate act, She knows that she's not going to be able to accomplish anything. She has to know that. And yet she does it anyway and almost gets killed. But Megatron instead lets her go, sending her through another ground bridge because, as I said before, he doesn't want Optimus to see his forces executing someone rather than capturing them. And he also doesn't want an Autobot around, someone who knows who Optimus is and can get Optimus asking questions about what's going on. So, in a weird way, Optimus actually saves RC in this situation, and RC's failure to confirm whether or not Optimus is still alive on the ship contributes to a scene later in the episode where we see the Autobots, their entire dynamics start to break down. They don't know what to do. They've never been in a situation like this where they didn't have a leader to rein them in, and they're starting to blame themselves and each other. Their morale is crumbling, and it's a little over the top. The scene itself is a little over the top. All of their reactions are a little melodramatic, but I still understand what they're going through. But what's most interesting about this scene is that it's Jack who reins them in. It's Jack who takes the lead and comes up with a plan to fix everything. It seems that Optimus was right to put his faith in Jack. He is the only person present to recognize that if the Decepticons are building another space bridge and now they seemingly have everything they need to finish it, all the Autobots have to do is find it and figure out how to hold it long enough to send a party through to Cybertron and activate Vector Sigma. It's a tall order, of course, but it's doable. It's certainly more doable than transforming their ground bridge into a space bridge in time to save Optimus that way. This is a fantastic episode with a lot of fantastic character interactions and a lot of really great imagery. All of the imagery that Megatron makes use of when he's trying to brainwash Orion over to his side is fantastic. Like, obviously it pisses me off because I don't like seeing even fictional characters being gaslit, but it was still really cool to see how effective and how brutal Megatron is in this kind of situation. And even before any of this, seeing them etch a Decepticon insignia into Optimus Prime's arm, it just floored me. That's not something I ever expected to see, and it's not like I liked seeing it, but it was still a wild ride. I also want to bring special attention to the fight between RC and the various Decepticon Vehicons on the Nemesis before she started to get overwhelmed. It was a super well choreographed fight sequence, and obviously I'm a little biased because I like RC so much, but that doesn't change the fact that it was really good. The animation on it was pitch perfect, and it made really good use of the fact that she can transform into a vehicle. That's not something you see nearly often enough in any Transformers media, but they made good use of it here. It's not like it's the best fight scene of the series or anything, but I still think it was good enough to be noteworthy. It also bears mention that Peter Cullen, who voices Optimus Prime, was amazing in this episode, and he is in the next couple of episodes as well. Cullen originally based his Optimus Prime voice on sort of like a John Wayne impression, but it has grown into something entirely its own at this point, and it was so cool to hear him playing the same character. Like, he's recognizable as the same character. He's recognizably playing the same character, and yet he sounds so much more meek and submissive. He really does an excellent job of showing off his true range as a voice actor, which is something you don't often get to see all within the same series. But despite how great this episode was overall, and there are even little things that I liked about it that I didn't even have time to mention, I think my favorite thing about the scene is the cliffhanger at the end. I mentioned earlier that Megatron lied to Orion to get him to shut up about Starscream, claiming that Starscream was dead. Well, he's not, and it turns out he decided to choose this exact moment to infiltrate the Nemesis, and Optimus sees him, and bam, that's where the episode ends. We don't know what's going to happen, and there are so many options that it's a lot of fun to think about. This is overall, as I said at the top of the review, an excellent setup to this mini arc, and I love it a lot. I know I had a lot of complaints about the way that the story was structured at the end of last season, but already at the start of Season 2, we're back to the story of this show being structured pretty much picture perfectly. Let's hope that it can keep that streak going. As per usual though, guys, I'd like to know, what do you think of the first part of the Orion Pax 3-parter if you have seen it? Let's get a discussion going in the comments section down below, or over on my Discord, link in the description. But either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.